I appreciate being with you all. I enjoy this. I hope you will as well. The introduction that Ron gave focused a lot on my organizational work, but as he also said, today we're going to focus on more of a personal look at leadership, at identity-based leadership, because success begins with you, everybody in this room. So that's what I'd like to do, is focus on you. And let's see, how do I get this thing to go forward? Okay. Here we go. All right. So what is this thing I call the identity imperative? And here's a quote from one of my gurus, I guess you could say, people I really respect, a gentleman named Abraham Zalesnik, who is a Harvard Business School professor of organizational behavior. And this comes from his article called The Human Dilemmas of Leadership. He says, the exercise of leadership requires a strong sense of identity, knowing who one is and who one is not. The myth of the value of being an all-around guy is damaging to the strivings of an individual to locate himself from within, and then to place himself in relation to others. So I find this to be an elegant statement. And this, by the way, this quote comes from 1963. So 50 years later, which it is, remains completely relevant. So here's a quote from a more recent book from me, from Identity is Destiny, where I write that leadership isn't a job, it is a way of life. That means find yourself, be yourself, and show yourself. Because people regard leaders as special, leadership has become a framework for coming to terms with one's unique capacities, one's identity, and then living accordingly. That's the nature of the work that I do with individuals as a coach, is helping people who are looking to improve their leadership position, grow in themselves, grow in professionally. This is the nature of that work. And here are the two books Ron referred to. On the left is Identity is Destiny, the book that's aimed at executives. And on the right, the Identity Code, which we are going to be focusing on this afternoon or this morning or evening, however, wherever you may be. Okay, so let me just give you a little background. That must be a stunning image. Like, you know, what is this eye in the middle of this presentation on identity all about? People ask me, how do you come to know what you know about identity, and how did you develop such a passion? And this is the backstory. When I was 4 years old, I was put into the hospital by my parents because I had been born cross-eyed and they wanted to have my vision fixed. And as a 4-year-old, I have to say I didn't really understand what was going on, no matter how much they tried to explain. And I remember being wheeled into the operating room on the gurney, literally remember it. And lying there on the gurney with canvas straps being pulled across my chest and my pelvis to keep me stable. I remember the big bright light overhead going on and a doctor in a green mask coming over to my right side and looking down on me. And by now, I was panicking. I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know why I was there. My parents were not allowed into the operating room as they would be today. And at a critical moment, I thought I was going to die. So I asked myself a question inside. And the question I asked was, what is so wrong with me that I must be changed from who I am? And in that instance, I had a sense of being alive, a literal consciousness of my own life. And then everything went black. And ever since that day in the hospital, identity has been the governing force in my life. And that is the genesis of everything you're about to see and hear. So what do I mean by identity? As you all know, it's a word that gets a lot of use these days in many contexts, whether it's political, religious, ethnic, any number of contexts. But I have a very particular definition which I assign to identity, which kind of cuts through all of those associations or affiliations. My view is that identity, your identity, is that unique combination of characteristics that reveals your potential for making a distinctive contribution in the world. So it's about three things. It's about uniqueness, that there is literally only one of you. This is so important. You can have a doppelganger, you can have a twin, it doesn't matter. You are unique in this world. It is about potential, which is to say that identity is about the future as well as the present. It's about what you can become and what you can give. And then the third defining quality, which is the most controversial in my work, is around the idea of constancy, which is that who you are never changes, but how you express yourself can change infinitely. So this is what I call the identity paradox. You are who you are from the moment of conception till the day you pass, but how you bring yourself into the world and how you express your identity can change any number of times. That maintains your relevance, your freshness, and your ability to stay present in the moment. So uniqueness, potential, and constancy are the three defining qualities of identity, according to my work. There's a question I've had people ask, which is, well, does this identity stuff really work? Does it have an impact on organizations? You know, and how do you know? So some years ago, I commissioned a research study, third-party research study, called the Identity Impact Survey. It was a one-year effort, it had about 1,900 respondents. We looked at 5 companies. You can see the breakdown in terms of size, location, public, private, B2B, consumer, and not through attitude studies, because attitude studies can change a lot, but sophisticated psychometrics. Here's what we learned. And I got to tell you, folks, I didn't know what was coming. I didn't know what was coming. Here's what we learned. That combined organizational and individual identity strength have a major impact on employee engagement and by extension on business performance. So here we're looking at the simultaneous merits of organizational identity strength and individual identity strength. And it was a pretty revealing and reinforcing result. So when I do work for clients on identity stuff, we present this information and it gives them a sense of, okay, this makes sense. Let's see what we find about who we are and how we create value in the world. So now let's move into the thick of the presentation of the discussion. And these are the 8 questions that frame the identity code, that second book that Ron mentioned. And let's look at the leadership corollary to each of these 8 questions. So the first question, and these are in sequence, by the way, these are not random. The first question is, the famous question, who am I? And here I'd invite any comment you want to make. When you look at this picture, what do you see? I guess I'll just kind of voice it over. But you're welcome to chime in if you wish. You see a family, friends, or whatever together. And it goes to the idea that relationships are fundamentally important to us all, which they are. But you cannot answer the question, who am I, by looking at your family or looking at your friends. The way to answer the question, who am I, is by defining yourself as separate from all others. And the reason you do that is because you need the space, if you will, the room to explore who you are apart from everybody else in your life. This is a fundamental first step in what I call identity mapping. You define yourself as separate from all others. It's like a launching pad for the discovery process. The leadership corollary is this. that what you do and how you do it is not who you are as a leader. You are not your job. You are not your methods. You are simply you. So we're going to get into the conversation about the nature of leadership begins with just knowing yourself. And there are some very important reasons why this is the place to begin. But you're not your job, you're not your methods or your approach, you're simply you. The second question is, what makes me special? And here, it's one of those questions that gets to the notion of what makes me unique. What are my unique capacities, my natural strengths that others, don't necessarily have? The way you answer the question about what makes you special is you unearth what you love. For example, if I asked you to write down 4 or 5 things that you love doing, maybe it's hiking or skiing or cooking, whatever it might be, very simple, seemingly mundane activities. Then you ask yourself this question: why do I love hiking? And you ask yourself the question why maybe 2 or 3 times in relation to each activity you named. And suddenly, you're faced with insights about what you really love that were not obvious at first blush. But the idea that how do you answer the question, what makes me special, is you unearth what it is you truly love. Here. So as a leader, you have innate capacities that distinguish you. This becomes now very important. When you're leading other people, they look at you, as I said earlier, you are a special human. You have superpowers. You certainly have influence. And they want to know who you are. They're very curious about who you are. And these capacities that I mentioned here, they constitute what I call your identity muscles. Here are 3 examples: a genius for discovery, a passion for learning, an instinct for harmony. Those ideas, those strengths, those natural strengths were only discernible by unearthing what you love, by unbundling seemingly innocent activities to learn what really drives you and what it is you truly love. These muscles are most valuable when they're being exercised in the context of your work. Think about how you would apply your genius for discovery or your passion for learning if you're a leader. How will you make that work for you and for your direct reports and for others? Because now you understand things about yourself you might not have understood the day before or the month before. How would you bring these to bear as a leader in your organization? The third question is there a pattern to my life? And this is a question which I always find very amusing when I give workshops, interactive workshops in groups, face-to-face, whatever. And I'll ask the audience, well, is there a pattern to your life? What does that question mean to you? And I am stunned by how many times people will raise their hand and they'll say, well, yeah, my pattern to my life is I've been divorced 3 times, or, I eat too much, or some negative pattern. And I have yet to figure out why people default to looking at this question as a way to identify negative activity, because that is clearly not my intent. My intent is to show you that there's a very powerful, positive pattern to your life that has been in place since childhood. And it's in understanding that pattern that you learn a great deal about the powers you hold as an individual and as a leader. So the way you answer the question is you make the connections that explain past events and foreshadow your future. As I say, this stuff began when you were a kid. And it's interesting. What you do is you come up with 7 or 8 or 9, what I call milestones, key achievements in your life that you're deeply proud of. Doesn't matter if anybody else cares, whether it's your parents or your friends or your teachers. It's all about you understanding and loving certain activities that made you feel proud. Looking at them holistically, those 7 or 8 or 9, whatever it may be, from childhood, sports, school, education, work, there's always a pattern there, always a pattern. And you have to make the connections that explain it in its holistic sense. So here's your example. Here's the leadership corollary. The pattern of your life reveals a theme, your what I call life force, that explains how you create value as a leader. As an individual, but again, being an individual and being a leader are totally interdependent. Resourceful creativity, soulful efficiency, courageous resilience. These are the net explanations of that life force. Resourceful creativity, I will take claim for that one. It's been with me my entire life. It's not just being a creative person, it's being creative in a way that solves problems, where I bring a certain resourcefulness to it, and it has never failed me, ever, to help me solve a problem or meet a challenge. But I didn't know it was present until I did this work many, many, many years ago. You'll look at the middle one, soulful efficiency. It sounds like a kind of a contradiction in terms, and perhaps on the surface it is. But for this individual, it is the essence of how she approaches the world, how she approaches individuals, problem solving, and it works for her great. So whatever it is. But these ideas tie together several different milestones in these people's lives. And you go, oh my God, I've never seen that before. But yes, it's always been there, and it always will be. And you can use this theme to understand how best to approach problems and meet challenges. And certainly, as a leader, this is going to be a very important way to bring folks together and solve problems. The fourth question is, where am I going? And this question I always enjoy, because the guy scratching his head is any one of us at any given time. So sometimes you don't know. I mean, there are times I walk down the street in New York City, where I work or have worked for a long time, and I look at all these people going up and down the street, thinking about things and shaking their heads, and half of them are going, where am I going? And they don't mean it physically. It's like, what am I doing? What's going on in my life? So this happens a lot to people, and it certainly happens to me at times. The question, where am I going, is difficult to answer, but it kind of brings up a special challenge. That when you get to this point where you feel confused, or you feel a sense of doubt, or you're uncertain about what the next steps are in your life, you need to commit to the path revealed in what you have learned so far. And what
the pyramid is work on it. It'll be a little bit sensitive, like everything we want to feel. It'll make more sense when you learn it.
Ron? Are we okay?
I did talk to her.
Yeah, sorry, we just had a technical issue.
Oh, okay.
A lot of decision making.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay.
I think we're good.
All right. So,
Apologies.
all right. Whatever. So committing to the path revealed in what you've learned so far. You've learned what your innate capacities are. You have learned what your life force is, that value creating theme that courses through you. And sometimes you get to the point where you go, my God, I don't know where I'm going anymore. Maybe I should give up. Maybe I should turn around and let all this stuff go. This is a moment of commitment, a critical moment of choice, where you really do need to say, no, I'm going to keep going. I may not have all the answers, but I'm going to bring sense of faith and fortitude to this work and to my life, and just continue forward. The leadership corollary is this, that at times of uncertainty and doubt, you can remind yourself what your special strengths are, your innate capacities and value creating theme, and strive to make the most of them as you lead others and yourself. So moments of doubt happen to all of us, but at this point, if you follow the identity mapping process, you will have learned a huge amount about yourself. And the idea here is to stay that course and stay strong and to move forward. The fifth question is, what is my gift? And we all know this gentleman had a gift. And so do you. And so do you. What is my gift is like reaching the top of the summit of the mountain in the identity discovery process. And when I refer to gift, I am actually referring to your identity. What is my gift is what is my identity. And the nature of identity in this context is that it is your gift to the world. Your identity is your gift to the world. And the way you identify it, articulate it, is you follow the signs of joy. Those things that give you great joy, that bring you alive, make you feel a sense of life, is your identity. That's what you've got to find. And the corollary here for you as leaders is that your identity is your gift to the world. And you can fill in the blank by saying, I feel most alive when I am, for example, helping people to see, inspiring renewal, teaching the art and science of personal evolution, deceptively simple statements that spring naturally from who you are. And aligning how you lead with who you are is the surest way to build a team or an organization, and in fact, a life that will benefit everybody, including you. So I am Larry Ackerman, and I feel most alive when I am helping people to see. That is me. That's what I do. And it brings me untold joy to do that work. And there is something inside of you that will have the same impact and the same power that any of these statements have for the individuals who they apply to. Your identity is indeed your gift to the world. The sixth question is, who can I trust? And here we turn from discovery of identity to the kind of the application or implementation of your identity to your life or to your work. The thing to do here is to ask yourself, not just who can I trust. For example, there are different levels of trust. For, who can I trust to paint my house and do a good job? That's one level of trust. Another might be, who can I trust to babysit my kids Saturday night so my spouse and I can go out for dinner for a couple hours? That takes that level down yet again. Another level of trust can be, who can I trust to take care of my ailing parents? That gets even more significant. And yet there's a level below even that. And that is, who can I trust will want what I have to give? Who can I trust will want my identity, my gift to the world? The way you answer that question is you take stock of who matters and why they matter. So each of us has what I call a relationships universe. It's got a lot of people in it, friends and family and co-workers, all kinds of folks are in that relationships universe. But then you have to get discerning and begin to ask yourself, well, who will really want what I have to give? Who will care that I help people to see? Who will want me to share that with them? not everybody. So you have to get discerning. You begin to get very conscious about who will fit in and who does not fit in. And that's okay, by the way. Not everybody is going to love who you are. And that's perfectly fine. But what you do want to do is find out who are those who will fit into what I call your inner identity circle. It's a fairly small circle, folks. And the only permanent member happens to be you. But around you, you know, there might be 5 or 6, 4, 7 others with whom you are very close, who really do believe in you and really who do want to experience your identity, and you theirs, and you theirs. So the corollary is, who will want what you have to give? You have to use your identity as a way to optimize fit between you, your direct reports, and employees generally, as well as others in your life. So now you're getting very practical. You know, if you're a leader and you're about inspiring renewal, how can you bring that identity to bear in building a relationship with people that will let them experience who you are, and hopefully in positive and constructive ways that help them to grow?
Larry, I'll just interject for a second. There's quite a few people who joined us a few minutes into the presentations, and I just wanted to let everyone know that you are welcome to write questions in the chat, and we'll ask Larry to answer those. And we will go into a quick breakout room for about 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes from now, to answer one particular question, and then we'll come back to the plenary. I just also wanted to add my own personal note. I've gone through Larry's book and had the privilege of having Larry as a coach throughout the process. And it's what I found so interesting about this process is that it's a very positive, natural process. You know, when you said, Larry, at the beginning that people tend to, you know, why do we always focus on the negative patterns of my life? And if I look at myself and my colleagues and my friends, we're all constantly focusing on, you know, this is a negative pattern in my life. Why do I do this? Why do I do that? And what's really interesting about this process is it's not ignoring those negative sides, but it's really focusing on the positive. And when you do that, the negative side just disappears. It just doesn't become as much of an issue or a problem, because you're focusing on the positive side of your life and your meaning in life, your purpose in life. And so some of those negative patterns that we tend to focus a lot on, they fall to the wayside a bit naturally. And I found that quite interesting. So anyways, thank you, Larry. Keep going.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. The 7th question is, what is my message? And again, in the spirit of being practical, we're getting into the thick of it. So what is my message? You know, what is it you want to tell the world? And how are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? The way to answer the question, what is your message, is you have to declare yourself on the strength of your gift. You stand up, you know, figuratively speaking, at least, you stand up, whether it's in front of an audience like this, whether it's in a church group, whether it's in front of your family, your friends, whatever it is. And when people say, who are you, or what makes you tick, or what do you care about? You tell them, oh, well, I help people to see, or I inspire renewal, or I care about, you know, I feel great when I'm doing X, Y, and Z. You have to assert your identity. Let people know what it is. And as I like to say, there'll be in the rooms, proverbial rooms you'll go into, 100 people in the room, you stand up there in the front and you say, hi, I am Julie, or I'm Daniela, and this is who I am. And of the 100 people, 10 people will get up and they'll leave the room because they don't care. But for every person who leaves the room, I'll guarantee you 2 more will come in who do care. So this is a moment of courage, a moment of really declaration and assertion about who you are and letting the world know who you are. The corollary for leaders is you make your identity the foundation of your personal brand. You weave your brand into all aspects of your leadership platform. What and how you communicate, how you approach challenges, how you support and mentor others. You must be known for who you are. If you are a leader, and I've had many, people want to know, who is this person? Who is this man or woman? What do they really stand for? Because how can I trust them if I don't know that? Yeah, I can follow, but if I'm following, reluctantly, that's not going to do you any good as a leader. You want me right there with you for all the right reasons. So you make your identity the foundation of your brand, and you use it consciously and conscientiously in all forms of communication and problem solving. The last question is, will my life be rich? And I most certainly hope it will be. And you see this image here in front of you, the lovely tree with an extraordinary root system. And as I'm sure you can realize by now, it's the root system that is your identity that produces the beautiful tree, which is your life or the work, whatever you do in this world. But without that root system, that tree isn't very strong. So the way you answer the question, how will my life be rich, is you surrender to the pull of your identity slowly, maybe just over the course of time, a little bit more and a little bit more. You let your identity rise to the surface of your life, or the surface of your leadership platform, of the work you do in the world, of even how you pick friends. That's how you do this. Okay, so before we conclude, I think, let me just check. Oh yeah, okay. How do I go back? Oops, didn't want to do that. Here's the question. I'm sorry, here's the slide. So the leadership corollary, your identity is about creating value for others, which gives your work and your life greater impact and meaning. So the question to you guys is, Claire, what does rich mean to you? It could mean money, which is fine, recognition, maybe admiration, maybe a sense of integrity, maybe it's a good night's sleep. Developing an identity integration plan for how best to serve your organization and yourself. That's the challenge. Bringing your identity to life within the context of your own. So here's the question, Ron, I wanted to put out there for Breakout. How might identity-based leadership change how you work with others, how you evaluate and promote people, and how you recruit new talent? Can we do that?
Yeah, so I invite you to just jot down the questions just in case you might forget, because I think when you go in the breakout rooms, you don't see the presentation anymore. So the
Right.
questions
Or take
are,
a picture, take a picture if you want to.
or take a snapshot. The other thing I wanted to mention was that a really fun way to experiment with this, and which will show you and others how little we know about ourselves, is when you go to a cocktail party or you chatting with people at the bar or whatever, ask them who they are. And when they say, I do such and such, or I'm a doctor, or I am, this profession or that, ask them again, no, who are you? Um, and be prepared to be surprised. Most of us don't like that question, don't know how to answer it. Um, and it's a really fun way to break the ice, if you're willing to do that, when you meet new people. And it brings it back to yourself, because then, hopefully that person will ask you, well, who are you? And you'll find, at least for myself, and I think for a lot of people, that when you have to answer that question, you put aside your family, you put aside your friends, put aside your job. Who am I? Oh my God. It's a big question. Um, but even without reading the book and going through the 8 questions, you can experiment with that, in a fun way. That would be my takeaway. So I will put you in breakout rooms for about 8 minutes. And then we'll come back to a plenary and we'll ask you to share some of your insights with us together. All right, so see you in a bit. So welcome everyone, welcome back. I hope you had some good discussions in your breakout rooms. There's one question from David Mata that was in the chat, and so I wanted to see if Larry could answer this to begin, and then I'll ask you guys to share maybe something you've learned from your breakout rooms. David asks Larry, he goes, the questions I think encourage self-exploration and affirmation, but what if the answers are not positive? It seems like we might be forcing ourselves to feel good about ourselves and projecting this. How would you answer that, Larry?
I'm delighted you asked the question because I get it a lot. Again, this is my philosophy, my practice, and my belief that one's identity is an intrinsically positive force. In fact, it is the most positive human force on earth. And there is no such thing as a negative identity. The answer is there is a negative impact if how you grow up, maybe how you were raised. All kinds of issues can come up which make it difficult for people to explore this world, but it is intrinsically positive. And I think that is an important point of philosophy and practice for me in all the work I do, whether it's with individuals or organizations, that your identity is literally your gift to the world.
Thank you. So I'll ask if anyone would like to share some insights from their breakout room. You can just raise your hand and then I'll unmute you. I forgot to mention that you could assign someone to speak on your group's behalf, but I welcome any of you just to raise your hand and I will unmute you and you can share something that you've learned from your breakout rooms. Everyone's too shy to share. Okay, David, go ahead.
Hi, calling from Lebanon, and thank you very much for the invitation and for this, great questions, I think, which I believe definitely encourage, self-exploration and knowing yourself better. And as Larry said, see yourself in a genuine positive light, because I believe we have also, a genuine positive nucleus. When I had in the breakout room, I had, a very nice friend, colleague that we chatted about, the issue. And what I found is that there are, where we're going, like the mission and the purpose of the leader is also as important as knowing, so one of the questions was more meaningful, I think, to the conversation that we had, is where we're going, or the purpose, what we said, or the mission that we have. And sometimes linking it to something that happened in the past, like there are crucibles, that maybe have determined our purpose. So it is good to know the pattern, what happened in our life throughout, and how we got to where we're going. So it seems as if the questions are all interlinked. This is what I found, and we're trying to make sense out of them. It's the first time that I'm exposed to the 8 questions. It's a lot of food for thought. This was my my intervention.
Thank you, David. We have Julie. Julie, would you like to say?
Yeah, yes. Hi, thank you for inviting me. This is a great discussion, and truly appreciate these topics, Mr. Ackerman. We were talking about recruitment when we're recruiting our employees, and how far do people want to bring their authenticity in a different organization? Sometimes people are in a group, in a setting because because like the family reality or geographic reality, and how much can you expect people to live in authenticity, integrity in relation to their circumstances? How much do realistically can we expect to the person to give 100% of who they truly are in an organization. That was my kind of self-interrogation as I got talking with Larry Lucera.
Okay. You want me to respond, or just want to just keep
No,
getting
I
questions?
put it. Yes, if you'd care to respond, that would be lovely.
But I'll make it brief. All you can do is invite people to the table.
Mhm.
All you can do is invite them to bring their authentic selves in, and to let them know, frankly, that it's a safe space, and that it will be okay that you want them to be authentic, because it just creates greater value for the organization and for themselves. But you can't force it, of course. So it's kind of like a gentle invitation, and hopefully people will respond in kind. I think most people want to be genuine to the extent that they can be, but there's always a sense of vulnerability if you allow that to occur. As a leader, I think part of your job is to make it clear to folks that you'll be there for them and you do care.
Thank you.
What I find interesting, Julie, of having gone through the process of the 8 questions myself over a series of weeks, is that if people are invited to do the identity mapping with the 8 questions, and they have someone accompanying them, like Larry or somebody else accompanying them through that process, even people who are, so we all think, a lot of us think we're very self-aware, but going through this process, it's a very easy but systematic process. And so even people who are, let's say, not as self-aware, or maybe don't seem as authentic as they should be, or whatever, if they start this kind of process and go through it, which is, it's not it's a non-threatening process, without even knowing that it's going to lead to self-awareness, it will lead to self-awareness. So no matter how unself-aware you can be, if you go through the process, you will suddenly, I think, become self-aware of a lot of things, because the process makes you bring these things out in yourself. It's quite interesting. Thank you, Julie. And I'll just make a plug for your book, Julie, which is Lily's Way, which I've started reading, but that's about a woman trying to find herself, her purpose in the world. So anyways, just thought that was
Thank you.
Larry, there's another question from Daniela, and she says, or a comment from Daniela. She goes, I believe it's also important in which mental stage the person studied is, what stage, etc., to be able to see positive forces inside, gifts, powers, or energy. So I guess the question, Larry, is the mental state at which a person is at a particular time important in terms of the benefits of going through such a process?
Was that a voice? Somebody said something?
That was just
Oh,
yeah.
so
Go
the
ahead.
question is there a certain mental state necessary for this? Is that, I'm not quite sure I get
I
the
think it's
question.
more. I think it's more if people are not in the right mental state.
Oh.
You know, will this be effective, or is there a specific
Okay.
mental state that people should be in?
No, there's no specific mental state. You know what the mental state is? This is going to be sort of funny to say. Be willing to suspend disbelief. Just, you know, some people will be in a very positive place and really want this, you know, they're ready. You're ready for it. Those are the best clients. But then maybe you're in between. You say, well, I'd like to, I'm not so sure. And my admonition would be suspend disbelief. Let's get started, or you start, and let's see where it goes and see how you feel.
Do we have time for one last question or comment from any of you? Any more comments or questions from any of you? You're more than welcome.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Can we help, how can we help others like answer these questions? Can we ask them directly?
I didn't quite catch that. How can you help others do this work? Or
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like as we are doing it, how do we encourage others to do it? Like we just ask them to answer these questions or reflect on these 8 questions?
well, I think it depends on the individual, David. I think number one, some people will take to this work, like ducks to water. It will be very kind of a natural experience. Others will struggle with it. One way to help others and yourself is to have conversation groups. Set up a dialogue, set up a little group and tackle one question a week and sit there for half an hour and talk about it. What does the question mean to you? What does it bring up for you? You're not going to get, the depth of answers that Ron has experienced or that others have, but that doesn't matter. I think part of the conditioning here, or part of the intent, is to condition people to recognize that this world exists within them and to get them to begin to explore that world, no matter how bumpy the ride might be. So, yes, you can do it on your own, but it's a whole lot more interesting if you sit there with 2 or 3 or 4 other people and you have the conversation. Who am I? Well, what does that question even mean to you? And what does it bring up for you? What does it make you feel? Do that 8 times with 8 different questions. I'm pretty sure you will have developed a pretty healthy, a healthier sense of the importance of, at least the importance of identity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I would also emphasize the importance or the benefit of doing this, of not doing this alone. You can do it alone. But in my own process, having Larry as a coach really helped me to define things much more clearly than if I would have done it on my own. Doesn't mean that doing it on your own won't be helpful. It'll be extremely helpful. But I think whether it's with a coach or just with a friend or a family member or a colleague, or even if you do it with your team at work, I think you'll agree, Larry, it's much more beneficial than doing it on your own.
I agree with that completely. Look at it this way, folks. Identity-based leadership or identity-based living. It's a discipline. And there is a lot of nuance that goes into answering these questions, as Ron can attest. So I would not go into it with the intent of coming up with perfect answers for each question. It's not going to happen. I mean, honestly, you want me to come in and help you do that? I will, and others can as well. But honestly, I would just invite you to, just begin to experience it. Put toes in the water, see how it feels, see what you learn.
Great. Thank you, Larry, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm conscious of time. I know you're all probably anxious to get back to work. I hope you will experiment with this methodology and the identity code. We will send the recording to everyone and also
Ron,
link. Yeah,
can I have 30 seconds for one last
of
slide?
course. Yeah.
All right, my last slide. What is the meaning of leadership? Leadership isn't centered on life at the top. It is centered simply on life. The moment we recognize this fact, we're in a position to see that leadership begins as a solitary step, wherein we first assume responsibility for leading ourselves. So leadership with a big L transforms into leadership with a small l, a more humbling act of self-accountability that once undertaken may or may not result in leading others. From this vantage point, authenticity precedes authority.
Great.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Can you just expand on that a little bit, Larry? Just
Oh, yeah.
because I think this is key, and I apologize.
Yeah, I think it basically self-leadership. Are we all familiar with the term self-leadership? It all begins with you. It all begins with how well you know yourself and lead yourself and make choices based on who you are.
Right.
That's what this is about. And that's about authenticity. Yeah, you can be in charge, you can be the boss, but if you're not authentic, people will frankly figure that out.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much, Larry, for being here
My
today.
pleasure.
It was really a great pleasure to host you. And on behalf of the IMPM program and McGill University, thank you all for joining us. I hope you'll join us next month, where we shall most likely have a panel on ChatGPT and its impact on the business world. So it'll be a very interesting discussion and panel. And receive an email with the invite for that session probably in July. So wherever you are in the world, I wish you a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening. Sleep tight if you're ready to go to bed. And hopefully we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron.